How does the Triple P model deal with parenting problems that occur in the context of multiple other problems, including trauma, addiction, and parental mental health problems?
Okay, well, thank you for that question. The design of the Triple P system has always had this notion that it's not a one-size-fits-all and that you need a tiered continuum of support for families with more complex presentations. And as I said earlier, about 6% of all the evaluation research has focused on those families in complex situations. The important thing to remember is that the original design is that if parents are introduced to the parenting skills and then if they require supplementary or enhanced interventions, they have been able to in the past to access through Enhanced Triple P, which has got additional modules focusing on communication with partners, focusing on management of your own emotions, building an approach to teamwork and so on. They've also had the options of doing Pathways Triple P, which the idea for me working on this really originated in New South Wales, doing some group Triple P training for social workers who are saying, you know, I think the families we work with need additional things. And so we landed on the provision of extra modules around attribution retraining, that is helping parents who've got a belief system that, you know, my child is deliberately doing this to annoy me, to upset me, then if they can change those beliefs and cognitions, they're more likely to be able to reduce their anger, feel that retribution is less likely to be justified. And we're able to demonstrate, and others have as well, that the provision of this attributional and anger management training is very, very helpful for parents at risk of harming their children. And then, of course, you've got other interventions like Family Transitions Triple P, which is focused upon parenting in the context of separation and divorce. All of these are existing programs that, when you think about a population approach, families with complex problems, of course, are also able to participate in things like community seminars and discussion groups and so on. So they, in an environment where it's becoming socially normative for people to prepare for parenthood, the parent with complex problems is less likely to associate the program with stigma or to see it as something, this is what you do when you're failing as a parent, which is really problematic. And of course, this introduces the work that we've been doing in New South Wales with the Sydney Local Health District team to do a trial, a feasibility trial of an intervention called Family Life Skills that particularly focuses upon complex presentations of vulnerable families with high levels of ACEs. The important thing to remember here is the capacity to self-regulate is related to many different aspects of our lives in terms of not just our parenting role, but our role as partners, as workers, as members of a community, etc. And self-regulatory capacity is diminished when parents experience these multiple forms of adversity. That diminished self-regulatory capacity can really adversely affect the way in which parents can interact with their kids. So it's useful to just pause for a moment and just ask the question, well, what is self-regulation and what does it look like if you would be considered to have high self-regulation as a parent? Well, first of all, you'd have a clear sense of what you want to do, how you wish to raise your kids, what behaviors and skills do you want them to develop that you would see as fitting with your culture, with your priorities, with your views on how the world operates. You'd have realistic expectations of your children, yourself and others looking after them. You would be attuned to zeroing in on what's going on. In other words, you would be reflective frequently about how you're going and have this awareness of what your children are doing, whether they're safe, whether they're busy, whether problems can be anticipated. When valued outcomes, for example, if you had a goal of, I want to leave for work without shouting at my kids, and you find you getting angry, you're giving the kids the hurry up, you're feeling as though you're about to explode, a self-regulated parent would activate these self-control processes that would enable them to pause, to tune into their own actions, to search for memories relating to what they've done in their Triple P work and how they can handle that transition situation. They may even just need to pause for a moment, refocus, take a few deep breaths, then get back into executing the plan. They would have expectations that change is possible because they've experienced change in the past. When they reflect on what they're doing, they'll do so without being too critical or harsh about themselves. Their reflections are going to be constructive, and they're going to increase their sense of efficacy and agency. And they're going to use these self-regulation skills when they need it. In other words, you're not constantly on alert trying to, plan, monitor, and track what's going on. It's activated by threat, by challenge, by things that are occurring that require a change of action on your part. Parenting's a tough gig, but they would mostly enjoy it. Now, the problem is that we've got a situation where families living in difficult, challenging circumstances, in poverty, in social disadvantage, in a world where they've potentially have mental health problems themselves. They've been exposed to family of origin models that are not terrific. They may have relationship issues with not just partners, but extended family, with teachers, sports coaches. You can see the potentially modifiable risk and protective factors around the outside. And instead of thinking of these as contraindications for doing parenting, let's think about parenting programs as a bi-directional opportunity to influence those social determinants of parental capacity. So we've been working with the team to essentially revise level 5 of our Triple P system, and I'd like to acknowledge the contribution of all of these contributors who have brought additional expertise in the area of trauma, in the area of self-care and compassion, in the area of addictions to the core Triple P authorial team. And the idea with family life skills, you have a front end of core parenting skills. It could be the group Triple P for 2 to 12-year-olds. It could be teen Triple P. It could be stepping stones. It could be baby Triple P. And then you combine it with these additional modules that focus upon the life skills challenges that parents are confronting in terms of dealing with difficult emotions, how to take care of relationships, looking after yourself as a person, how you deal with parenting issues arising from the past. And there can be various ways in which trauma can have been experienced both historically and concurrently right now when the parent is doing the parenting program. The main principle behind this intervention, however, is that the level of introduction to these topic domains are relatively brief, they're focused, but they have a constant thread across each successive session of building that sense of agency, that sense of can do. There are things that I can do here that will make a difference. And parents themselves choose which of these domains they're going to concentrate on with homework and be supported in doing so. So when the trial was done, this was an open feasibility trial. We wanted socially vulnerable and disadvantaged families who had high levels of ACEs. We were successful in recruiting 50 cases, remember, terribly disrupted by COVID and had to transfer from group-based delivery to Zoom delivery via group, with both a parent group and a practitioner group who had never done it before in this way. But a remarkable flexibility was shown and resilience by all concerned to still produce an outcome that showed that participating in family life skills was associated with a very significant change in terms of parents' reports of behaviour problems, reductions in unhelpful parenting, reductions in child abuse potential in terms of coercive parenting. And the underlying mechanism was showing this strong impact in terms of change in self-regulatory capacity, those 5 key principles that I highlighted previously that is embedded in Triple P as the common mechanism. And parents are much more confident in handling their kids' behaviour in particular situations, both at home and out of home. And this is improving to a very significant degree. The interesting thing, high base rates of child abuse potential and lower sense of personal agency when they entered the program was associated with a somewhat elevated risk of dropping out during the parenting pieces. But if they remained in, the good news was that they actually reported greater change in their children's behaviour, greater improvements in their own mental health and well-being, and greater reductions in child abuse potential. So this is looking a really promising intervention where, if you think about the recurrent targets of the intervention that is delivered across all of these modules, and the activation of the underlying mechanism, what we see here is significant improvement in mental health and well-being of children, improved parenting, improved parental mental health and well-being, and a trend for increase in social support, which would probably be greater with a larger sample. Remember, an open trial, we're ready to move to getting a fully funded randomized trial. This looks really promising.
Hi, Matt. My question to you is, what is the evidence and best model you can suggest for embedding parenting support into educational settings? Thank you.
This is a really important question. And I did a masterclass recently with educational psychologists and others delivering Triple P in Western Australia. And we had written an article that you can see there called Delivering Evidence-Based Parenting Support in Educational Settings. And what I'd like to do in framing a response to this question is just to highlight, first of all, how crucially important the quality of parent-child interaction is, and parent-school interaction is to learning outcomes and the children's experience of schooling. And so if you think about the enabling skills that are important to do with children's performance at school, both academically and socially, there's a strong evidence base to justify schools taking that whole issue of preparing parents to support their children's education much more seriously. Mark Dadds and his colleagues have developed this really useful model called CAPE to describe what it is that we're doing when we're seeking to engage parents, from initial connection and awareness to intention to attend, their attendance, moving to participating in the program, and implementing the things you're learning to improve outcome.
Previously, people were felt that if they turned up to a parenting course, whether that be Triple P or anything else, that it would be an indication that they were a bad parent, or it would be a sign that they couldn't cope with their children at home. Whereas I think now people realise that actually this is a course, it makes them feel a bit more valued, it's something that is much more socially acceptable for them to go to. I think because particularly here in our local authority, Triple P is run all over the place, so it's much more common for parents to attend, and lots of different professionals refer people to attend the Triple P course.
The interesting thing is that Tianyi Ma, who's a doctoral student of ours, looked at the post-training outcomes of practitioners from around the world, about 1,200 of them who had participated in one or more forms of Triple P, and basically found that the level of organisational support and leadership was a significant predictor of their capacity to sustain their implementation. So school leaders, principals, the school system itself, if it's supportive of making parenting programs accessible, normal, healthy and desirable, it's more likely to happen. I remember in Cairns, when we started the statewide rollout of seminars in Queensland, we were getting, a really good rollout of parents attending parenting seminars in schools. And one of the things that has become obvious, apart from the disruption of seminar delivery because of COVID and reduced rates of participation because of not quite the same degree of engagement with the online programs, it was important to start to think about who becomes an advocate and a champion for the support of making evidence-based parenting programs available in a community? And what this follow-up study, once again, led by Tianyi and Cassie Telligin and myself, looked at is what are the predictors of becoming a champion for a cause such as advocacy for a program like Triple P. About 90% of practitioners reported that they became personal advocates once they had participated in training, and another 10% actually started a role of public advocacy. And this is at a higher level of advocacy, for example, presenting at a conference, being able to support a position paper, to advocate in policy. And basically what was found is that apart from believing the program is effective, the champions who are most likely to become public advocates are, surprise, surprise, those with more power or authority to do so if they believe in the program. So getting on side school leadership is important.
Thanks for the excellent presentation, Matt. My question for you is, how do you see Triple P meeting the needs of increasingly complex and challenging behavior in children transitioning from preschool to primary school? Thank you.
Very important question. I think the main issue is, first of all, let's not see the action needing to take place entirely around the transition period into primary school, because obviously earlier detection and earlier intervention is an important way forward here. Parents, when they're 3 and 4, if they participate in Triple P, what's been found is that in longer term follow-up of those children, they actually do better with literacy and numeracy at school and with higher school attendance. But in addition to that, we have to remind ourselves of the importance of the early childhood education sector. And importantly, there is a new version of Triple P called the Positive Early Childhood Education Initiative, the PEACE project, which is essentially for early childhood educators and those working in childcare, where the parallel skills that are taught to parents are introduced in a very efficient online training process that is now available. And this is a recent report that's demonstrated its efficacy. Once parents are ready to transition to school, they're worried about a number of things that about whether their children are equipped to handle the challenge that's ahead. And this is where the offer of a universal seminar program for all parents enrolling in school can be very helpful if you use an opt-out strategy rather than an opt-in strategy. Because if it's an opt-out strategy, then it's seen as healthy, normal, and desirable. It's not prescriptive. It's not about judging. It's not about telling you what you have to do as a parent to raise your kids. It's about creating a toolkit for parents to reflect on, to determine themselves what it is they feel that they need to do. And the school's role is to help parents, in a sense, get on the same page with the school with respect to behavior, what's expected in terms of, standards of conduct, but also the learning environment. Schools can also offer topic-specific seminars and workshops between that enrollment period, and of course provide a conduit for families to participate now in Triple P online, but with check-in support from, for example, a school guidance counsellor may identify a group of parents who want to do Triple P online, and then he creates or she creates a closed Facebook page or something like that that enables them to meet as a group. All right, so the other thing that I just wanted to emphasize here is the importance of effective teacher-parent communication. If you think about research that has really shown that if parents are difficult, challenging, and demanding, or abusing and accusatory towards teachers, this is not a good situation. Teachers report not being well prepared in their own training to handle difficult conversations with parents. And of course, parents are rarely taught the skills of how to advocate appropriately for your children. And this is a particular problem with parents with special needs. A a doctoral project by Grace Kirby in our centre had identified in a survey of Queensland primary school teachers primarily that a very significant number of teachers are reporting distress as a function of their interactions with parents. So along with Grace and Julie Hodges, we are working on our school, which is an alliance of parents and teachers program, and this is to develop a parallel online program for parents in terms of their interactions with schools and communication and advocacy, and for teachers to have a parallel process that prepares the reciprocal. So this program is being worked on at the moment, and we're envisaging within the next 12 months or so it would be accessible.
My question is, if Stepping Stones Triple P can't be offered or delivered to a family, is it okay to offer standard Triple P?
The answer is yes to this. In fact, we've got evidence from randomised trial work that Cynthia Lung at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, she's now back in Australia, but has conducted a randomised trial showing the regular group Triple P in the hands of a knowledgeable, skilled practitioner working with those parents is able to achieve beneficial outcomes in terms of changes in children's behaviour. However, we wanted to make sure in the development of Stepping Stones with the Disability Services Commission in Western Australia that this was more customised to parents who had children with special needs. And one of the things that's been interesting with this is that you can also deliver Triple P online with additional material with a moderator around the additional Stepping Stone strategies. And Sharon Hinton's doctoral work demonstrated using the mechanism of telehealth with Triple P online and also supplementary Stepping Stones material could be very beneficial. We just had published an evaluation of Stepping Stones seminars for the first time, a randomised trial in Korea, conducted by a scholar at the University of Auckland with Louise Kewen and myself, which is an interesting finding.
Hi, Matt. A question. Time out from attention is a key parenting skill for teaching a young person to learn self-regulation when they are being disruptive, non-compliant, or unduly emotional. How do you manage the situation if parents refuse to use such brief separation approaches? Thank you.
Okay, I think the important thing to recognise is that the use of procedures like quiet time and timeout are very widely used in the parenting community. It's probably the second most commonly used parenting strategy, but it's one of those strategies that has developed some bad press at times, and there's been a growing evidence base to really look at the tricky questions. I mean, and some of this work, importantly, has been led out of New South Wales. Mark Dadd's recent work with his colleagues published in JAMA, I think was very interesting because it posed the question of if families presenting with conduct problems had had a history of trauma and were participating in a program that incorporated timeout, how would their outcomes be, and if any, compared to those who didn't have a history of trauma. And in contrast to what might be predicted, they did just as well as those families who had not had a history of trauma, which is speaking to the fact that many parents who've had histories of difficult times, when they learn the skills properly and do it appropriately, it can produce very important outcomes. And certainly no evidence that is credible at all that what was claimed in Time magazine that timeout damages children's brains. So if you've got parents who are concerned, what do you do? First of all, clarify the parent's referent. Where they're saying we don't like doing timeout, what are they actually referring to? Are they referring to what it is that we would consider to be timeout in Triple P? And so clarify whether the parent has used it previously or not, identify what the specific source of the parent's concern is and where they heard about this. It was from the media, was it from friends, was it from articles, did it come from bad experiences? And then share, where relevant, the evidence that relates to the stated concern. And there's now quite a lot of evidence that's showing that parents who are doing Triple P report improved relationships with their kids. They get on better with their kids. They have secure attachment. It was interesting. I did an intervention a few years ago with a parent who said, you know, I've always loved my child, but doing this program has taught me how to like them. And I was thinking, gee, when kids are less challenging and difficult, they are more likable. And natural attachment processes that will evolve and be strengthened as a function of that. You can do live demonstrations of the technique, either showing the videos or doing it in person, which I'd recommend for a parent who's uncertain. And make sure the emphasis is upon non-escalation of voice, the preparation of the child in advance, the avoidance of any threats, and ensuring you remain calm and follow through. And of course, it's important to, when you do a demonstration of this with a parent, to show them, ask them about how it felt as a child going through that experience and what their reaction to it was. I mean, another question that we've been asked, well, how does Triple P deal with parents' children's emotions? And as though Triple P hadn't ever addressed children's emotions, when in fact Triple P right from the beginning has had strategies specifically embedded in tip sheets and seminars, in materials that relate to anxiety and distress, in materials that relate to children's kind of emotional reactions to things like being bullied and peer victimized, in Teen Triple P when there's a clear emotion behavior routine. This has all been embedded in the program. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you add an emotion enhancing component to delivering group Triple P, it's going to improve outcomes. We tested this in a randomized trial led by Karen Salmon at the Victoria University of Wellington. She's probably known to many people in New South Wales because she was in New South Wales for a long time. But we basically compared group Triple P and an enhanced, emotion-enhanced version of group Triple P, no added benefit by adding the emotion component. Both were effective, even though the parents using the emotion coaching were demonstrated to have learnt the skills and implemented them properly, and that they actually occurred. It didn't add to the child benefit.
Agatha has asked, are there adaptations of Triple P for supporting children with severe language delays?
Yes, indeed, there are. Some new tip sheets have been written about the promotion of early language that are part of the 0 to 12 tip sheet series. There's been a study that is particularly focused upon this, funded in the UK, that has looked at identifying children from low resource communities who are at risk of language delays, and then essentially implementing group Triple P with a twist. Remember, many of the strategies that promote language and communication are already in the Triple P model, things like incidental teaching and things like Ask, Say, Do and so on, that promote language exchange. And so if there's a group of parents where that is a concern, it's example, emphasis and homework, and it's applying the skills that are embedded in the program to customize it to the particular situation children are in. So there's some interesting work that's been done in that space. But absolutely, I think it's crucial that we do more research on children with different kinds of language problems. For example, Trevor Mazzucchelli's group with students has done work on Triple P with parents of children who stutter and produce good outcomes.
Now, in the comment box in the chat, there were a few questions around like emotion coaching. And I know you did address that with that one paper that did evaluate the addition of emotion coaching in addition to Triple P. But I'd just like, but Rachel has asked, does Triple P work in conjunction with other models such as Circle of Security or its alternative? So I just wondered if you could comment, and I know you did do it briefly in the presentation, about how you could work in conjunction, if you wanted to, with those other models.
Look, I think the important thing is that there's a range of practices out in the community that are already there, and they've got strong followers and folk who are doing this work. Some of those are evidence-based, and others have fledgling evidence but would not meet the evidence-based criteria, for example, to get on the National Institute of Clinical Excellence's list in the UK, which is pretty stringent. And so the point that I'd make is that Triple P works with all evidence-based programs, and that the whole idea is to see a suite of complementary offers. No program, doesn't matter what it is going to suit all parents, and they're always non-responders. So the idea of having parenting support that's accessible, not in a single point in time, but remember, this is a longitudinal thing. So parents can participate in parenting programs, going in, going out, joining, exiting, re-engaging, because there are new challenges at different stages. So I think it's important that in a population perspective, we have a blending of things that are known to work, that we've tried and tested, but also a high degree of respectfulness to other things that are in the community, particularly, and I encourage all of those programs to strengthen their evidence.
We've had a question from Hardia, both in the chat and a pre-question, about Stepping Stones resources being translated into other languages such as Arabic. So I just wondered if you could comment briefly on that.
I believe and Lisa Studman, you can help me with this. Would you mind just answering that question, because you gave me the answer to it and I just can't remember off the top of my head.
I did. I emailed you last night. Yeah, the general Triple P resources are available in multitudes of languages, about 10 different languages, especially the group and the seminar program. And you can find those resources if you're a trained Triple P provider on the providers network. You can just download them. And some of the videos are translated into different languages as well. There's a lesser number of translations for Stepping Stones, so that's just available in Danish and English. But certainly, yeah, Arabic is one of the languages that general Triple P comes in.
Okay, and the whole idea of, having multiple languages, the reality is that you can't translate everything all at once, and it takes time and resources to do so. But it is fundamentally a goal of Triple P to make it accessible to all families. So we've got to look at that issue very, very carefully.
And I guess in addition to the CALD families that might be using the resources, we have a little comment from Patricia, and she said, Matt, I was trained by yourself in 1997 in Liverpool, southwestern Sydney.
I remember that training well. I do.
I am very encouraged by the availability of Triple P to all families. And she's not sure if she missed this, but she was wondering about your thoughts about using Triple P with refugee families.
Look, there's a lot of work done on Triple P with refugee families. Some of the best is actually in Auckland, some of the best research that's been done on this, where, a range of refugee families, it's become socially normative for that whole community to participate in Triple P. And I know in Auckland, there's a group where the discussion group format, level 3, has been particularly popular. But I think the important thing is that there are now a number of studies that have shown that for refugee families, it's a very important induction process, actually, to be thinking about raising your children in an environment such as Australia, where you're preserving your culture, but at the same time being attuned to perhaps slightly different ways of doing things. The main thing that I'd emphasize is that the provision of parenting advice and support needs to be suggestive and not prescriptive, and it needs to be highly respectful of culture, because fundamentally what we're aiming to do is empower parents to use the tools that they learn about with Triple P in a way that works for them. And so if we don't take that into account, we end up being too judgy, too prescriptive, telling people what it is they must and should do. And that's not the best way of accomplishing change.
There's another question here about, can parents with low literacy levels do a Triple P program? So Yeah,
I heard a terrific presentation at the AACBT conference just last week talking about adults with acquired brain injuries and adaptations of CBT, and working with folk who have various kinds of cognitive impairments. The important thing to remember is that a lot of the things that really help parents who themselves have learning challenges actually help a lot of parents, and that is things like repetition, breaking down tasks, more practice, customized homework, the breaking down of directions or suggestions into clearly defined tasks and that kind of thing. The point that I'm really making here is that in the hands of a skilled practitioner, Triple P can absolutely be made to work. There was a trial conducted in Belgium with parents with mild intellectual disabilities who had been exposed to family violence, living in a shelter environment for a residential facility for those women. They all did group Triple P. It took a little longer. They had much more practice, much less emphasis on reading. They actually had great session attendance and good outcomes.
On that topic, we have a Belinda who's asked, I always find it awkward to suggest to a parent that a parenting course might be helpful. Is there a positive way to broach this?
Soon as you have an environment where a population approach is being taken, when you get more and more people doing it in the community, it's sort of like it's not a strange question to ask. It's something that becomes healthy, normal, and desirable. Have you done your such and such yet? Or which versions of Triple P have you done? And what happens with parents who do Triple P, they talk about it to other parents, and peer-to-peer advocacy is a very powerful way of engaging families, perhaps who are reluctant. So suggesting, if you have someone you know that this person could talk to about the possible benefits of being involved. One of the things that is hard for parents when they're asked to do a parenting program and they don't know what's involved, it's almost like we need to have a little website they can go to dip in to have a look and feel of what it's like to do a seminar, what's involved. Get some peer advocacy occurring, and in that way it's destigmatized, it's normalized, it's healthy, and it's desirable. No shame, no blame, no avoidance.
We have a few people who might be new to Triple P, and so we've had a kind of question around, is there a version for older children? And I know you mentioned Teen Triple P in your presentation, but perhaps could you just give a brief outline of Teen Triple P?
In the mid-90s, Associate Professor Alan Ralph and I started working on Teen Triple P. We knew that we've been working with Lisa Stubman and Trevor Mazzucchelli on stepping stones, and also with a group in Victoria around the 0 to 12 age group, but we started developing Teen Triple P, and so the answer to this is yes. There are multiple versions. There's a teen seminar program, there's a discussion group series, which are brief, single session, topic specific, 2-hour discussion group formats. There is a group Teen Triple P program, which incidentally, a new trial is just being launched in the UK for parents of adolescents on the edge of care, with really severe and significant involvement in the juvenile justice system, for standard Teen Triple P, which is the individually administered 10-session program. And now there's Triple P online for teens. So there's a range of resources. There's probably less outcome research done on the teen program, but there are still many studies that are, gradually building the evidence base for this across multiple countries.
There's a question here from Carolyn about where can trained facilitators complete refresher courses to ensure that they are up to date with the new information and some of the new programs that you mentioned today, particularly the PECE project?
Well, that's a question really for Triple P International to answer, relating to the availability of different training options that are there. But I will say that We, within our centre at UQ, have got a series of seminars that are openly available on research updates. There's a YouTube channel that people can subscribe to. For example, this seminar would be placed on there so people can dip into it and have a look at, you know, what's new, what's coming, what's evolving. The thing that I've just got to say is that this is becoming a harder and harder issue to do. I think there's about 50 new papers per year added to the evidence base. To keep up with it, it's really difficult, even for us. And so to have an opportunity like a seminar update like this that enables us to share with the professional and policy environment what's new, what's fresh, what's happening in the world of evidence-based parenting support in Australia, it's great. And I'd like to see more of these occur.
There's another question around training in stepping stones, which is the adaptation for the 0 to 12-year-old parents of 0 to 12-year-olds with a developmental disability or intellectual disability, or any disability really.
Lisa, would you like to respond to that? Just exactly where they go for stepping stones
Oh,
training?
yeah. Look, you can train in seminar or primary care or group standard stepping stones P, and you'll find the training options available by Googling P open enrollment, and then all of the training that's available is scheduled there, and you can register online. And there was a question that came up about the stepping stones video looking quite old, and I can assure you that it's being rescripted and refilmed in the next month and being ready to be put online as well.
A question here from Wendy. If a young child, e.g. toddler, preschooler, is extremely emotionally distressed, so crying, wailing, etc., in timeout for an extended period of time, for example, 20 minutes, do you recommend still leaving them there to calm down on their own? If not, how would you help a parent to differentiate between when to leave a distressed child in timeout and when not to?
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's a good question, because, I mean, you have to think about it from a kind of 20 minutes out of a lifetime is a nanosecond. And so the whole the issue of kind of time and how long something appears to be going on, the important thing here is that when children have been used to escalating in order to get a parent to change tactic, to cave in, to give them the ice cream or whatever, what happens where the parent's done that, the child has associated this escalation with the kind of essentially the parent has associated the child's escalation as something that is unpleasant, and they're expecting it to continue, to get to worsen. Whereas the vast majority of kids who lose it will recover and stop and de-escalate their distress. What happens is that when the parents go in and talk to them and they coach them about how to deal with the emotion in the moment, the kids hold on to it. I reckon it's probably better to think of like the distress more like you do a panic attack. When someone is really panicky, there's only one certainty, and that is that if you do nothing, it stops eventually. And that the most important thing is that we've got to make it as easy as possible for children to stop quickly. And so don't do things that prolong the agony. And so if you're preparing kids and you do a dry run, you practice, you don't threaten, you don't voice escalate, you keep calm with the process, then what you would normally predict is that if you've had to do it 2 or 3 times on the first day, by the end of the week, it would have halved the amount of time that the child is likely to be distressed. And if it's done properly, you hardly have to use it at all. So it's temporary and transitional for most situations once children learn to self-regulate their emotion. And it does help them do that, and there's clear evidence that it does.
On that evidence, Karen has asked, can she be guided towards that evidence about the use of quiet time and time out?
Yeah, there was a slide that I put up that had a whole series of papers there, and we can provide a link to the relevant articles that are available to support it. But just be clear about this. Timeout is one of 25 strategies and stepping stones. There are many additional and alternative strategies to consider. And the whole issue that when you take into account parents' preferences for what it is they would like to do, they can prefer a non-timeout way, but it doesn't mean it's working, and it doesn't mean it's doing the job. So whatever they're choosing to move forward with, if you evaluate whether or not it's achieving the outcome, if it's working, fine, let them continue. And they don't need to be introduced to something if it's not required. However, if it's not working and it's continuing as a problem, then consider the possibility that time out for certain kids at certain ages with certain types of problems, it's likely to be very, very effective when done properly. And it won't work when it's done not properly, but nor will any of the other parenting strategies work. Every single one of them has got indications and contraindications. It works under some circumstances and not others. And the most common things, it doesn't work because it's not combined with the right other things at the same time. And the most important one with things like timeout is that you've created a positive, nurturing, caring environment when the kids are not in timeout, so it actually creates a contrast.
You've talked about parents being using Triple P effectively and the skills that they learn. And David has asked, parents often assume that once they've done the Triple P course, they're done. When can you advise that a family needs to renew these skills?
Look, the thing that I would just remind everyone of is that this is a lifespan approach, that if now with baby Triple P available, it could be that each successive phase of development, parents do a refresher, but they might not need to do a program as intensive the next time. If they've done group Triple P, next time it might be just seminars or a discussion group top-up. The thing, though, that I would encourage everyone to think about is what's the minimally sufficient level of support a parent requires to get on with it? Because you don't want to create an over-reliance on a service delivery system for every little thing that a parent is confronting and raising their kids. The most important thing is that they develop a sense of efficacy and agency, so they rely on their own knowledge and judgment. You don't want parents parenting by Google. You don't want them to be all parenting by Triple P, where they're constantly needing to check whether they're on track. What you need to create is this comfortable process of engaging, exiting, re-engaging to the minimally sufficient extent you need, exiting, and continuing on like that for life. I'm a grandparent now. I'm nearly 70, 5 grandkids, and we're still learning about how to parent our adult kids and our grandchildren. And it's a healthy, normal, desirable thing to do, and it's what connects us all as a community.
There's just been another question on the parenting. Where can parents find out about courses that are available for them to do? And I think Lisa might be the best one to answer this one.
Look, it's different in every state. So I know I'm based in WA and we have a microsite, a Stay Positive microsite, so all our courses are advertised on there for parents. In New South Wales, I know you have the Resourcing Parents Network, so parents can find out about Triple P and other programs from that network. I know, Matt, in Queensland, you probably know more about how parents will access it there. So it's a little different in terms of accessing seminars, but when it comes to the online programs, Triple P Online and Fearless Online, that's just universally accessible now.
So that would be going to the
Triple P Online, which is available to parents to access as well.
Great, thanks, Lisa. And if people get stuck and you want to direct a family towards any of the Triple P courses, you can always email SchoolLink and we can point you in the right direction.
I've always been concerned that child mental health was unaffordable in the third world, and so I'm really interested in your encroachment into, we're not calling it the third world these days, developing countries. Do you have access and evidence about how helpful that is and whether it can make an impact?
It's interesting, David, that because there's so much research being done with Triple P now, we're in a position to compare outcomes in more individualistic cultures, more collectivistic cultures, and cultures where there are very low resources, and also in middle income countries, which have some resources, but in most of these environments, parenting is not a policy priority. There's little funding available for either research or implementation. And that the approach that we've taken is being open to being approached by different groups in different countries around the world to see if they can create a masthead for research being conducted in that country around the use of Triple P. And I mean, it's interesting, we've got a doctoral student here who's done a trial of baby Triple P through telehealth delivered to women in Kenya from Australia. I mean, he's a Kenyan psychologist, but the world of the internet has created a whole new range of opportunities for lower cost delivery of programs, providing people can access the internet, which they can in many low resource environments, not as stably often as in wealthy countries. But the main point that I'd make here is that we should make no assumptions about what is going to work and not work until we give it a try. I remember years ago, you know, just thinking about when I was in Iran, which has done quite a bit of research on Triple P now, and saw this kid in a bazaar in a public place throwing a massive temper tantrum. And I was thinking, you know, gee, that temper tantrum that's occurring right here, right now in Tehran looks very similar to the one in Brisbane and very similar to the one in Tokyo that I've seen, and also in Beijing, where it's almost universally embarrassing to the parent. The motivation is to turn it off quickly. They're looking for solutions that will work in that situation. And we found with our work with Triple P, providing the parent identifies with the situation, the actual parenting situation, they're open to considering whether or not this might make sense. And so we've had a lot of feedback from parents in low resource environments where they actually have never seen an alternative in action that doesn't involve hitting kids. And, you know, just thinking, well, there's a different way of doing this. I remember a parent sharing a view once again from Kenya, saying that I didn't realize that you didn't have to hit your kids to be a good parent, and that learning that you can be positive with them often, that's a life changer for me. It's kind of like that it just hadn't been considered. Now, in the world of the internet and the world of sharing and all of that kind of stuff, it's much more likely that people will have access to ideas. But, you know, if you do a search, and a colleague of mine yesterday from the United States, she said, I did a search on Google for parenting self-help books, and she said, I got 1 billion hits. And I said, are you sure? You've got the numbers right there? But even if it's way less than that, there is just an overwhelming amount of information available. And it's really hard to tell the good stuff from the evidence-based stuff to the things that really can be advocated with confidence. And that's why the research process, even in low and middle income countries, we should never forget the importance of not just making programs available, but when they're made available, do they work here? So practice-based evidence is crucial. It's not just about evidence-based practice.
Perhaps the question to finish with is, in the discussion, there's been some commentary about, well, you're not tackling the causes of adversity, but you have addressed to some extent, you know, tackling adverse childhood experiences and, but I guess, and trauma. But adult mental health is another significant issue, and addictions, again, you mentioned. But it comes back to what do you see as the barriers to implementation of universal parenting skills?
David, I honestly think that people do not realise just how significant parenting is to the mental health and developmental outcomes in kids. It's such a common pathway to improvement of many diverse outcomes that even the policy lens we have around this doesn't give central importance to parenting, family well-being, and its relationship to the ongoing development of of kids. So that's the first thing. I think we have to really educate more and more people about the crucial importance of it. And sometimes people avoid talking about parenting because they think you're going to be criticizing them. And politicians maybe want to steer away from, you know, the nanny state idea of interfering with family. Parents are looking for support. They're looking for assistance. They don't want to be judged. They don't want to be criticized. They don't want their cultures minimized. And if you take a self-regulatory framework that's about empowering the parenting population, I think it'll make a huge difference to not only children's well-being, but adult family life and over a lifespan.
So I guess my other pet hobby is that, you know, for example, Project AIR is talking about opportunistic intervention. And certainly it's my own experience that you incorporate the skills from Triple P in your day-to-day practice. Do you have evidence about how professional skills in case management change as a result of exposure to Triple P?
I think one of the things that's been found with a lot of evidence-based practices is that when practitioners sort of cherry pick and they just take a bit of this and a bit of that, sometimes they leave out the things that they find difficult, and they can be the critical active ingredients. So for example, if you're doing exposure-related work with children with anxiety problems, that can be challenging. When kids are having to confront things that are difficult, sometimes practitioners leave that bit out when it's a critical active ingredient in overcoming anxiety. So the main point that I'd make is that the starting point, I think, are the evidence-based protocols that have been trialed and tested, and look for opportunities to utilize them in a structured way so that the parent, as a parent community, knows what they're signing up for, and that it's not just reliant on professional judgment all of the time, because parents have expectations as well about what they're looking for. I've had parents ring me, say, do you know this practitioner who's running group Triple P down in our school, and he said, oh, we're going to leave out all the telephone calls. We don't have time to do that. And it's kind of like, well, that's a crucial part of the program, but the parent was alerting me as that they were expecting me to do something about it, which I found quite interesting. But it's reflective of the fact that the consumer, parent as a consumer, has a very strong interest in making sure that it accesses the programs that they see as being important to their role as a parent, and evidence is important to parents.